All right.
Welcome. It is the Gen Blend episode 3. I am Sophie
Welcome.
Wade.
And I'm Danielle Farage. I'm a Gen Z speaker and talent strategist, helping bridge gaps between Gen Z and the older generations through learning and authentic connection.
And I'm a workforce innovation specialist, and I help up-level leaders and lead and grow multi-generational distributed teams. So let's get started. What's the topic for this episode?
So, this week, we're going to be tackling the multi generational issue of is your career on track?
But first of all, we're going to get started with our Fast 4 News series, right? So when we look at 4 recent news articles, and I'm going to jump right in. The first one is Millennials Facing Ageism. This was from Business Insider. Millennials used to be big tech's hottest hires. Now they're starting to be seen as old fogies. Nearly 40, now that 41% of the US tech workforce is aged 25 to 39, where it's normally about 33%. Age discrimination is becoming more prevalent among companies where STEM jobs are prominent. So, should non-Gen Zs feel comfortable that we're, all in the same boat and all feeling discriminated against? But everybody needs to get on board, and everyone needs as well as wants to get upskilled with AI, right?
Definitely. I think that it's interesting because I find that we have a lot more in common than we think, and especially in terms of things are changing so rapidly that it's actually I feel kind of the same where I feel like maybe I'm going to get left behind, right? And I feel like we share a lot more fears than we think. But I am
Mm.
excited for millennials to be in these more senior positions because I feel like we vibe. We definitely align on a lot of like the leadership styles that we want to see more of.
Yeah, and I think to your point, it's not a generational thing because if Gen Zs are also feeling that way, maybe it's just we're all trying to adapt to a very fast-moving landscape, and that's what it is, so that we can all feel like it's not about age, it's about the pace of technology change. Okay.
Definitely. All right, our second story this week is about trauma awareness growing in the
Mm,
workplace. This comes from Work Life. So there's been a growing awareness around mental health obviously at work, which we know, but there's also been a bigger recognition of trauma and its impact on performance and work experience. So around 70% of US adults have experienced some type of traumatic event at least
mm,
once in their lives, according to the National Council for Mental Well-being. And it's important to make the distinction too between big T trauma versus little t trauma.
right.
Little t is, those smaller things like that cause disruption in emotional functioning. They could be divorce, legal trouble, financial instability. But then
Mm,
there's also big T trauma, right? Which
mhm.
is a larger event, like a car accident, an assault, something like that. So it's interesting because I find that my generation has a lot more conversations about trauma and
Mm.
about mental health because we have a lot of access to the information, right? When you were growing up, you probably didn't have access to the same amount of
Yeah.
information. You definitely didn't. So the language and we naturally have the openness to exploring and speaking about this, and not just within our families, but also within our colleagues and our friends.
Yeah.
And so I think not only are we normalizing mental health, but we're actually normalizing the conversation around the deeper work that is required to move forward and to heal. And Sophie, I know that there are differing opinions about whether or not these conversations around mental health belong at work. Do you think this is a positive shift?
So yes, to go to the end, I will say that I do hear conversations about people need to toughen up and be more resilient. I think it is a tough circumstances that we're in. The things are changing. Um, I think sometimes it can feel there's a perception of some potential exaggeration, and that sometimes things are conflated and sound like they're big T trauma when they may be small T trauma. So I think being careful about words can be helpful. But I do think it's really important in trusting environments where openness can lead and in people feeling safe to speak up and have the discussions and being able to more easily seek out and get the support that they need. I think that's really important, and destigmatizing mental health, because there's a lot of things that are challenging the environment. It's not just skills; it's also the greater environment, climate and wars and things like that. And so that support, those discussions I do believe are really important, and that's positive.
Right. And I will say we tend to use a bit stronger language than required at times, right? Like not every job interview is traumatic.
Well, yes, and so, and sometimes it can be, younger folks can be more prone to some drama and storytelling. So, got that. So the next one is about it's boomers and Gen X want to retire differently. This is from Newsweek. More people are opting for a phased approach to retirement, where they gradually reduce their work hours rather than just sort of outright stopping. There's a survey which revealed that 34% of workers age 50 plus, so boomers and Gen X, have begun transitioning into retirement, 15% by working reduced hours and responsibilities, or they have expressed 19% of it expressed an interest in doing so. So I would say that, the data shows, and I've done some research into this in terms of retiring being, from going from 100% to zero is a huge shock to the system. And, mentally, physically, and also just, community, financially as well, you're sort of losing the income stream, but you're losing a community of people as well. So I think a phased approach where you can be continuing to, be earning some money, but also transferring knowledge, and as well the role of mentorship. It can be extremely important and valuable within an organization as people take a sort of, if they can take a more phased approach. What do you think?
Definitely. And I think that the issue is that 4 generations are really hard to manage at work. And, that's why I do what I do, right? Because it is hard. And space at the same time needs to be created for these younger people to move into leadership roles. And so what I'm excited to see change is for the power to no longer stay at the top. And obviously I understand that people in powerful positions want to see their friends stay in powerful positions.
Yeah.
But I am seeing that companies that tend to release the reins a little bit and simply let Gen Z do their thing and step into their power. And same with millennials, these like younger workforce, the next generation, right? Specifically in the marketing realm, I'm seeing it the most. They're winning the attention more and they're breaking through the noise.
Yes, and I find that very valuable in terms of having more of the transition. And so if you can have people taking it down, then that frees up space and changes the dynamic overall.
Yep. All right, let's move on to our fourth and final story of the day. Why Gen Z wants better career exploration in high school. So according to Forbes, many young people are worrying about how they're going to discover the right career, gain the right skills, and make the right connections. 69% of current high schoolers and 66% of graduates wish they had more career exploration during middle school and high school years. So teens want their parents involved, also 48% to help them find jobs, and 43% sharing resources, which is a big percentage.
Yeah.
And so as someone who graduated not too long ago, I feel like one of the most impactful and maybe the only career lesson I learned in high school was to not be attached to a single career path. And that came from my college advisor. And I think at the very least, we could be helping students understand the different types of careers, not profession-wise, but more so that there are nonlinear careers, there are portfolio careers, entrepreneurship, solopreneurship, so that if they don't want to be a doctor, lawyer, or go into finance, or maybe do whatever their parents did, that they know that there is another way. Yeah. And, one of the most useful things, in my opinion, as a parent is to actually just bring your kid to work to let them see what it looks like.
Yes, and what the experience might be. Yes, it's fascinating because the reason we're doing this episode is because careers have changed so much. There are new possibilities, new jobs popping up all over the time, all over the place. And we can have, each person should be anticipating having multiple careers, actually transitioning into different areas, transferring their skills. So I think giving people more understanding, middle school, I'm really amazed that people are so aware, young people are so aware at that age of the changing possibilities. So I think that can be very beneficial. And the explanation to Gen Z parents as well, giving them some more information so that they can be helpful in recognizing that careers don't have the same vertical linear career trajectory that they were used to, that they experience, so that they can actually be more supportive and helpful to helping their kids navigate the new career paths. Yeah.
Right. It's tough. It's really tough. But that very nicely brings us to our main topic of the day. Our blender bender is your career on track. So we have a lot to get to. So if you have questions, pop them in the chat and we'll hopefully get to them afterwards. So let's start with the first question of, how will I navigate my non-linear career, or just my career generally?
I think the first challenge here is that a lot of more senior folks, so millennials, but more likely Gen X and boomers, aren't necessarily aware of how much the career pathways have changed. And that I've heard many comments about, Gen Zs, why do they want these nonlinear careers? Well, those are the typical careers that are available because organizations are much flatter. So they can't take that sort of incremental step-by-step linear approach that was possible before. Now it has to be some career progression, needs to be horizontal and diagonal. And so that is a whole different landscape. And so I think some of the challenge becomes who above them can help them, can support them. And it also means that if, let's just say you're on my team, Danielle, and you want to go to another team, to another division, I need to have relationships to be able to take you across there, to sort of say, Tom, will you take, Danielle's fantastic, and, she really wants to try out, and she doesn't have all the skills, but, take her on board. She's a great learner. And also I have to be willing to give you up. You're great. You're on my team. You're knocking it out of the park. You're really helping me achieve my results. I need to be able to give you up. So I think there are a lot of different elements there that are challenging to help you navigate your career.
Definitely. And to your point, I think it really is hard for the average manager to help their younger counterpart navigate this new career landscape, because it is really different. And that might feel on the other end that you're not being supported, and that you maybe need to seek out some support in other areas, right? And I just, funny enough, did a webinar a few weeks ago on career transitions, and you'd be surprised how few people have considered speaking with a career coach and have leveraged any type of coach who, they can help you get creative. They can help you think about skills differently, maybe even pitch your own role to companies. So I think it's tough. I have a lot of empathy for boomers and Gen X managers who really maybe feel that they're not equipped to help their counterparts with their career journey. But I think it's really challenging right now.
Yes, and companies, they are starting to have the internal mechanisms. That means understanding, having mapped everybody's skills, understanding what skills needs are going to be in the future, for a particular team, for a division, being able to map that and sort of see who wants to be developing those and acquiring those skills and how that's going to happen. So there's a lot of the internals in internal marketplaces, a lot of logistics and the mechanisms that need to be in place to facilitate that, as well as the interpersonal relationships and the willingness. So I think there are a lot of things that need to be in place, and education to help the managers understand what to do, and the people on their teams take ownership of some of that development and give them some of the information and understanding of what the dynamics are. And I think, talking about careers more, talking about what the possibilities are is going to help. But we are very much in a transition phase, and I think more discussion about it will be helpful, so that, say, younger people don't get as frustrated and sort of say, like, somebody's blocking me. But it's, we are in transition, and so trying not to leave an organization because it isn't as easy as they would like to be able to move elsewhere. These mechanisms, are often just not in place yet.
Right. And it's interesting because I'm currently at HR Tech this week.
Mhm.
I'm in Vegas, which I forgot to mention, but I've been getting a lot of questions from people about, hey, Gen Z, is it hurting them that they're not in the office? Don't they need to be, in a physical space to gain mentorship like I did when I was that age and to grow their careers? And it's interesting because it's not necessarily the fault of the young person, right? Like maybe they graduated into the pandemic like me and didn't just even get that opportunity to be
Right.
in the office. And so it's not really their fault, but they actually, a lot of them want to come in.
Mhm.
And realistically, the experience of work isn't as intentional as they would like it to be. And so it really highlights what you were saying before, really highlights the importance of mentorship, right?
Yeah.
Not just from older to younger, but cross generations, cross industry, cross team, cross sector. Each of us, I believe, is an essential part of this hugely interconnected web. And we
Mhm.
each have networks and relationships that we need to activate, especially at a time when things are moving as rapidly as they are, in order to help each other grow and advance in our careers.
Exactly, and you also mentioned a point, early on about, you may want to be coming into the office, but yes, often the managers might not be there, or the executives that they're interested in connecting with. Yes, flexibility and the options as to when you're going to be going in, I know are very important, and I completely understand and value that. So I think that intentionality, not just about when people in the office, how they're going to be circulating, how we're going to be using office time, but also how some of those conversations that happened maybe in the corridor, though, by that water cooler, that happened to be about maybe you saying to me, "Oh, Sophie, I really wanted to meet Tom, who's in that other division. Is he around today, or when might I meet him?" Those type of conversations really shouldn't be down to serendipity, shouldn't need a sort of coincidental meeting to happen. Those type of conversations, as well as work design, needs to be intentional. So how we're scheduling our work, what we're doing, and how we're actually helping people progress in their advance in their careers when so much is changing and people are needing to be thinking about all the different skills they need to be acquiring and developing over time in what sequence. That intentionality is a really critical piece of where we are now and how we're going to be get to be every single person in the organization is going to advance
Yeah.
in the way that they want.
Yeah.
So this is a great question, this is a hot topic. How quickly does someone deserve a promotion? Take it away, Danielle. What do you
All
think?
right. So what I've seen amongst my peers is that many of them have either opted out of the career ladder at one
Mm,
company and moved positions to get promoted, right? Move to a
okay.
different company, which isn't a
Mhm.
new trend. Or they stay, they do the loyalty thing, they put 2 years in, and much of the time they aren't seeing it really pay off. And that is aligned with what the numbers say, right?
Right.
You can gain more access to more money if you move to a different company.
Yep.
And then they look for, other positions, and entry level positions aren't really entry level in terms of the
No, they're not.
skills needed, but they're compensating that way, right? So they're requiring more, but they are not compensating as much. And so I'm seeing a lot of people with skills and experience a few years in taking roles that they feel they aren't really being fairly compensated for,
Mhm.
or they just start their own businesses, which tends to be glamorized by social media.
Yes, that's for sure. I think it's challenging because we are in such a period of evolution and where there was an article several years back in 2019 which was saying that entry level jobs were 3 to 4. That was 5 years ago. The entry level jobs were 3 to 4 years more advanced than in previous years. So with the easy jobs being automated away, what a job looks like and what responsibilities there are, people are seeing new hires are being asked to go and meet customers within 3 months. That never used to be the case. So what someone does and how quickly get to the point where they might have been promoted before, which used to take maybe 2 years. What is the appropriate amount of time? I think that's very much that's in a state of evolution. And I think it's tough for companies. I think it's tough for managers to understand where a job is, how it's evolving now, what is the appropriate compensation for now. We are in a different environment. So it's not going to, the pay isn't going to go up in proportion to how difficult the job is. We're just in a more complicated work environment. And so what does that mean? How is that going to be evolving? I think some patience and tolerance for the fact that we are in such a changing environment is important. At the same time, companies can be that much more thoughtful about being clear what a promotion takes, giving a lot of clarity about what the expectations are. And, when expectations can't be completely satisfied, why? Being open and thoughtful about, communicating what's going on. I think that can be helpful to sort of navigating where we are.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there is this gap that I'm seeing in the mid-entry level roles, right? And I wonder if that gap is going to continue to exist, or how will AI change levels within a career? Will we even have levels, or will we be just super specialized? And I think it's a good time to reevaluate for organizations, right? At people, because people need money to live off of.
Yeah.
And or if you're not making money, right, you need to be learning and upskilling so that you
Yeah.
can get paid more eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that, things are changing very fast.
Yes, and I do see that there are a lot of, as I said, the managers, older managers, and particularly Gen Xers and Boomers who aren't as aware of the changes that are happening, and so they aren't in a position to be able to be as supportive as they might be. So having them be more aware, and so that they can provide some help and support, I think is going to be very meaningful.
All right. Well, the financial thing brings us to our next question, which is, how can you advance in your career to meet your financial needs? Sophie, what do you think?
Well, I was looking for a good percentages in terms of the number of millennials and percentages of millennials and Gen Zs who have side hustles in the US particularly, and I've seen between 40 and 60%. But let's just sort of take the lower end of that in terms of 40+%. But there's a large percentage of employees under 45 who have a side hustle, who have a second job, and a vast proportion of those need it because they can't make ends meet without having two jobs. So there is the need for financial completion so they can actually pay their bills, and then financial security. Without having any job security, then having at least one more income stream so that they aren't beholden just to one employer. We've been talked about this in previous episodes, but I think that is a very important consideration when employers are thinking about what about side hustles? And because you and I have talked about the non-compete situation. Yes, the FTC it was looking like all non-competes, or almost all non-competes, were going to be banned, but at this that was going to be prohibited going forward. Now there's been a stay and a lot of lawsuits, so there's been a lot of contesting that non-competes should be able to stay around. So now it's in flux. It's not clear what's going to happen. But I think, when people are thinking about side hustles, often there isn't a competing element to it. But what are you finding?
Yeah, I think that first off, the non-compete case is a positive indication to me that they might get banned eventually. I understand where they could be useful. You don't want your employee working with a competitor. But if you have a side hustle, I think that it's important to be thoughtful about what your side hustle is in terms of how it might conflict with your existing or full-time role.
Right.
I think what organizations are starting to capitalize more on and recognize is that social media is not going away. and therefore they can't ignore it for any much longer if they still are.
Right.
But they're starting to capitalize more on viewing their employees as ambassadors of their brand, and not to prop them up and say, oh, look how much these people love their jobs, but more so doing it in a way that taps into the authentic experience of
Mhm.
work, and what truly makes that company or team unique. And so not necessarily only tying them to their full-time brand, but maybe also leaving room for them to pursue their creative interests on the side,
Sure.
and work with other brands as well.
Yes, and I think when a company has strong values, a strong culture, and employees are aligned with that and connect with that, there's much less likelihood that they're going to try and compete with their actual employer. They might be interested
Right.
to use their transferable skills in other ways, or it might be something that's adjacent because that's one of the reasons that they're there. So I think that also is an important element to be thinking about for the employer and the employee.
Totally. If you have trust, obviously you're going to feel better towards your organization. And in terms of where I see us going is that we'll have more individual contributors working on a
Yep.
project base where you have the opportunity to take on more work when you need more capital, like when
Right.
you're buying a home, moving, getting married. And I think that's something that is very aligned with what Gen Z wants, in that they definitely want money in their pockets today for the work that they do.
Right. And that the idea of the having multiple income streams and being able to support themselves financially goes to the next question, which is about portfolio careers. And what about portfolio careers? I mean, this is a growing trend. And what I mean by portfolio careers is that this is not somebody who has a full-time job and a side hustle. It's really somebody who might have a part-time job or fractional job and multiple clients, or they might only be an independent contractor, consulting, lots of different project works, freelance work, more a 1099. So these are longer projects, might be sort of permanent, ongoing, part-time work with multiple clients who they're working for. So it really is a portfolio of different things that they're doing, or clients that they have. And that really is, I mean, I know a number of millennials and Gen Xers who have between 3 and 6 different
Wow.
income streams, whether it's from, it could be book sales, plus speaking, plus courses that they have, and, a number of other things that they're doing, could be influencers as well. So I think there are more people who are having these, a different combination of things that they're doing and clients or clients that they're working for in their portfolio of careers. What are you seeing with some of your at the Gen Z level? I know I've seen that with older workers who've taken this non-employee route. What about at the
Yeah.
Gen Z level?
Well, so let's just kind of understand that Gen Z is, oldest 28.
Mhm.
And so I think that we're at a certain point in our careers where we have a couple of years under our belts, and we understand that the value we're creating for companies, we can apply those skills to other companies and take on clients in a
Right.
way that we never have before, unless you're a full-time entrepreneur right out the gate. So
Yeah.
I think that I'm more so seeing it in the social media marketing realm. But I have seen more people jump into this type of work in the recent weeks, and
Mhm.
in terms of business ops, hiring, sales consulting. And I think the biggest challenge for them is really just securing clients. I think a lot of the time it
Yeah.
happens organically, but if you're trying to do this full time, I think because you don't have as many contacts like former employees and partners and colleagues and clients who can really speak to your work,
Yeah.
it can be hard. But selling yourself is called an art for a reason.
Yes. And I think the other issues with that, which is about health insurance, particularly in the US, if we're thinking in terms of covering that, which is why a lot of people they might want to have a portfolio career, but they stay with a corporate job and then might do a side hustle or have a few clients on the side in order to cover that health insurance. And also we need to think about the upskilling. I mean, it does tend to be that those who are in the independent marketplace, they tend to, because they're actually selling themselves every day almost, they need to stay upskilled. And that's actually one of the interesting things that I was just recently interviewing Kelly Monahan of Upwork, and she was talking about there's some great research out of the Upwork Institute, which was showing how companies are using or expanding their blended workforce, which is really supporting the portfolio careers by hiring more and more independent workers, freelancers to fill in the specialized AI, particularly AI skills needs that they have. Because not knowing how the company is going to need to grow and what skills they need, it can be a very beneficial way to bring in specialized skills from outside, and that goes to the growing blended workforce as we talk about it, and supporting new careers, which are people looking to have many more clients and have a very different type of work arrangement.
Right. And I think one of the considerations besides health insurance, which is really a big one, and I know it's touching people close to me, is with portfolio careers, it's not only about who you're working with, but who are you learning from? And I
Right.
think it could be
Yes.
really difficult. I was just talking to someone last night in this similar position who she went out on her own, and then she realized, oh wow, like I actually miss being on a team, and I miss working with other people. And I think it could be really difficult
Yeah.
to find other people with similar career paths.
Yeah.
And for me, I find that in many people, like you are serve sort of a different purpose and a different aspirational model for me,
Mhm.
as than maybe Janine Sua, who
Right.
focuses more on content and community. And I think that's why we're also seeing a lot more communities pop up, like the
Yeah.
Fractional People's Network, Groove, Generalist World, which Generalist World, for example, just it helps generalists understand their value and communicate that
Okay.
to the job market. And I think similar to other communities as well, they serve a similar purpose. So it's been really interesting to see the rise of these kind of individual contributor communities that are all
Mm.
helping each other to define what they do, and to
Yeah.
communicate that.
Yeah, I think it's very powerful, and the more support, the more the communities, and the more the sort of the sharing and understanding how to position yourself, what your value is, what your skills are, not just the ones that are easy to identify, but really some of the other skills that sort of help you contribute to a team and to an organization from the outside. I think there are lots of things that people can be learning. And there is so much, in fact, there's so many possibilities that are rising all the time. It's a very exciting but also very fluid and evolving marketplace internally and externally. So and for all generations, and obviously Gen Zs are at the early stages of their career, but I don't think it's that much easier or clearer as sort of go up in organizations or get more senior and skilled in different roles, don't you think?
I 100% agree, and I think that the more that we talk about the more vulnerable parts of navigating careers with each other, the better, because it enables all of us to move forward in a stronger, more unified way, and to maybe set goals together and hold each other accountable and create little pods of groups, who are just trying to figure it all out, and look
Yeah,
forward to more of that.
and you talk so much about mentorship, and so I just want to say that the idea of mentorship and bidirectional mentorship, particularly when we talk about these sort of the old fogies and everybody but Gen Z really, potentially understand or thinking, appearing to understand about AI and technologies, and the experience and the guidance and the sort of the grounded, calm, hopefully that all the generations can bring to conversations, as maybe they're phasing out and partly retiring. So I think there's some really beneficial ways that people can be crossing generations and sharing more experiences that can be beneficial during these sort of quite turbulent times, right?
Definitely. And like we were saying before, it's not just about older to younger.
Mm.
Friendship, it really serves the purpose of this moment, right? It's things are moving so fast. There's no way one person has it all figured out. None of us
Yeah.
have it figured out. So
Yeah.
let's have it not figured out together, and
Yes.
be real about it, be honest, share,
Yeah.
one of the the posts I get the most feedback on, still to this day, I posted it maybe a little bit less than a year ago, is that post about, oh, this is my tech stack. And
Yes,
these are the tools that I'm using. And
I
I
love
can't
that
tell
one.
you how many people refer back to that post as, oh, like it was really eye-opening. And like, I want to share the same thing. And, oh, it started a conversation that I think oftentimes we kind of just gloss over, of like,
Mhm.
what are you using in your everyday that's actually
Yeah.
super useful to a lot of people.
Yeah, internal as employees and externally for independent contractors, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, whatever they, and it is evolving with all the AI skills. I know that I'm just continually testing and looking at and experimenting with all different kinds of AI apps, and they're changing all the time. So I think we have to wrap up. We've gone slightly long, but please put your questions in. We engage with the content afterwards. There are lots of things that we've raised. We didn't have time for questions, but we do answer the questions. So please pop them in, and we look forward to an asynchronous dialogue with you, and look forward to those.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for tuning in to episode 3 of the Gen Blend, where we dissect these generational topics and important topics to the future of work. And we will see you next month on episode 4.
Thanks so much. Bye.